Hi, we have Dr. Pradeep Chakravarthy here with us. Sounds very fancy, but Dr. Pradeep Chakravarthy is a historian, an author, and his most recent book is about history of South India for children. He loves doing programs with children, loves playing games, but we are here to find out what he did in his childhood.
So I had the pleasure and the good luck for playing a lot of games as a kid in my summer vacation time in a home that's been in our family for 6 generations. There were a lot of uncles and aunts and grandparents, of course. And those games, more than all the life lessons and everything, which of course my uncle and aunt would tell me once in a while, they just made it really, really fun. And this was a time when there were no cell phones, no TV even, and there were frequent power cuts. So it was a really fun time, and whatever I remember about that time of great happiness and just sheer enjoyment was largely because of the games that we had, but also the conversations and the tactics and the techniques of playing all those games. So really happy with what you're doing today. I was just looking at this board. It's in cloth and it's done so nicely with the printing. We had a Paramapadam like this, which
On
was
paper.
on paper,
Yeah.
which was I think a Deepavali Malar supplement
Correct.
from some Anand Vikitan or something.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting because each square had some cartoon, and many of them were politically inspired.
interesting.
So I remember, so the Ravana over here is a tiny snake over here. I think that one was Lanjam, which
Okay.
is taking a bribe. Yeah. So it was a fun thing of,
It was a political satire.
yeah, and somewhere it was, I think, saying something nice to your boss. I can't remember whether that was a ladder or a snake, but I remember then there will be a conversation of if you had a boss, who will you, what will you say? And I must have been about 5th class, 6th class, my uncles or aunts or my grandparents asking me these kind of questions, it really made me think hard. And I remember the reason I talked about the good quality of this one is we had moved the coins across on that so many times that all the letters had all gone. So it was just black. I mean, it was just white spaces over there. But that was really fun.
I think in those days, Paramapadam was very much a part of calendars.
Yes.
Deepavali Malars.
Yes.
And there were so many local variations.
Right.
It was a very fascinating part of people's lives, you
Right.
know. And
Then I had, we played Ludo.
okay.
But the interesting thing was one part of the board was torn.
Yeah.
So, we said, we have to go and buy a new board and all that. So my grandmother said, why? Just make your own board.
Yeah.
And it was a revelation that you can actually make your
Make
own
your own
board.
pieces.
And the counters weren't Ludo counters.
Just
They
whatever
were
you picked up.
whatever we picked up from the kitchen or from the garden, seeds, things like that. So it taught us also that you don't need all the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
You can improvise and make things go as you long. So, and then of course there was carom as well. And there was a grand uncle of mine who was really good at what he did. But somehow my aunts and uncles would gang up against him. And I remember if he won the game first, we'll close the game. And then he'll go and complain to my grandmother, who was his elder sister. And then my grandmother will come and say, no, you can't do this. So it was all good fun. It was really, I think this learning about winning and losing and creativity and just having a lot of fun.
And the
Very
relationships you built, I guess.
hugely, absolutely. There's no
And do
doubt.
many of those relationships endure even till today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fondness of even thinking about it, and I could recreate that same thing when I was playing all these lovely games with my
Those
son.
memories come back, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And your grandmother, you mentioned her many times. So you evidently had a very good rapport with her. So did she pamper you a lot?
No, she didn't actually, and I
Really?
didn't. I didn't. I have not recognized what she did right, but there was a very quiet sense of severity of certain rules that can't be broken. But there was also a lot of freedom given for what I can do, and I think I've learned to appreciate that only when I've become a parent myself, to see how difficult that actually is.
So childhood really has lessons of today are in
It
our
does.
childhood.
Yeah, it does. And it's not that, like a lot of people will say, my grandmother spoiled me by making all sorts of good food and all. She wasn't like that. She called herself a very functional cook. So the food was good, it was tasty, but she really worked hard to develop our minds. And I think that's where games also helped us out.
You also had mentioned earlier that you did play Pallanguri.
Yes.
And do you remember the Pallanguri itself? Was
Oh
it
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
antique piece?
She had a really lovely one. It was shaped like a fish, and it was rounded, and the fins were the legs on which the palanguri stood.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so the fins would be protruding, and if you opened it, then they'd be 4 legs.
Okay.
Very, very beautifully carved.
Do you still
Actually, I
have
don't know who
that? Is
has
that in the
actually.
family?
I have no idea. Actually, I should ask my uncle. I'll message him at some point in time. It was a lovely board, and we had those tiny cowrie shells. And there was another game that she played, which I don't know whether I ever learned properly. It was, you'll take the coin, you'll take the cowrie shells up, and you got to catch some of them, and then you'll have to do this, so they'll have to fall on the hand on the other side.
Yeah.
That was very, very difficult. And I still remember one afternoon when she was doing it, and somewhere as a little child thinking, man, this old woman is really fast. Yes. Didn't tell her that. But it was just that sense of dexterity that I'd never seen her do something fast like that elsewhere.
Yeah.
And just to see that an old person can have that skill and that speed as well, it in some subtle way taught me not to judge people.
Okay.
And that was a useful lesson, yeah. But those were good games. Pallanguri, somehow I never got caught on to, but I love those other Kauri games that she taught. And certainly Parampadam was a great fun.
So you mentioned how beautiful the Pallanguri was.
Yeah.
Is that one of the reasons? Was that the early stages of your getting interested in antiques?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
for sure.
Because I know.
Oh, even the box that we had for the Lego, for the Ludo, was this one of these cane boxes with a lid, and the lid had a lock on it. Gosh, I don't know what happened to that. So that one was this thick rattan kind of thing. It had a conical lid.
Was it a Ludo or was it?
No, it was like all sorts of stuff.
Was it Dai
It was Dayakatam, Ludo coins, everything, counters, everything went into that box. And the rattan was so good. It had some silver or brass moldings on the side.
How lovely.
Gosh, I don't know what happened to that either. But yeah, very,
Maybe
very
if
beautiful
you find
things.
them, you can share.
I
with
sure
us.
can. Yeah, I sure can. I'll ask my aunt.
Because
today.
I've always know you are fascinated by all these antiques, and here is this gorgeous board that Ashta Chemma or Dayakatam with its absolutely fantastic counters.
Yeah.
And so lovely
Isn't
to
this
see.
lovely? And I just love the way in which you roll the Dayakatam. That whole
Yeah,
tactile texture
yeah.
is so much more fun than the modern dice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, the second one somewhere inside.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
So lovely.
Lovely.
But the markings on this are a little different, from the traditional South Indian one. And usually we have 0, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And this is slightly different.
But from what I have seen of old ivory, these kind of markings are a decorative motif. And you find them across India actually. Yeah. So even in
But the numbering
Punjab,
is different.
Yeah, the numbering is different.
Different. It's more like the pagade of Karnataka.
Well, this probably came from Chettinad. So it could have been from Burma or Malaysia as well. You never know. Yeah, you never know.
Yep. But, so, if you were to think back of the games you played as a child, did you ever play outdoors?
No, not much.
You were very much an indoor person.
Yeah. Flat feet. Didn't have good shoes with arches in those days. So that kept me out of a lot of other games. Yeah.
So if you were to think back to your favorite memory of play, what would it be?
I think it'll definitely be Parampada Sopanam in that old
With the
board.
family.
With the family and with all those improvised. Oh gosh, we used to. One counter was a blue plastic car, right? and there was such a fight for all of us to get that blue car. Though we all thought it was a very lucky car, but in eventuality it didn't turn out to be so lucky. So I think we had to roll a 1 to get into the Parampada Sopa. I think that's the way we played our. So that the person who had the blue car would usually think that they will put 1 first, but they ended up doing 1 last minute. So that was real fun. I think.
But it's the strangest tiniest things that stay with us. No?
Totally.
And still,
Yeah.
they bring a smile to our faces
Totally.
so many years
Yeah,
later. And I
totally.
think that's the charm of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've often thought, what were each of those other boxes and that whole sense of mystery, because the board would have been rubbed so much you can't even.
See
in fact, in
what's
some
on
of
the
them you
box.
can't even see one box
Or probably
separate
even
from the other.
torn, no?
Yeah. And they had actually they pasted it on a thicker board, and that board was folded, and
Good
fun
times.
Good times, absolutely.
Lovely
good times.
memories.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pradeep, for sharing these fabulous memories, and look forward to playing many more games.
Yeah, let's do one right now.
Sure.